It is a pleasure to be here. And thank you, Anna, for your enthusiasm. Thank you for Nuno, who I've been giving hard time for the last couple of weeks. Thank you, Jan Baas and, and Dominique, who've been the closest contacts when we've been developing these projects. So I did not take the title that you had on the program because I wanted to be a bit provocative, and actually this was inspired from the last member state meeting we had in the autumn, and there was feedback from somebody when we talked about, we had a presentation from ETPLAS and we talked about the fees and issues of sustainability, and the comment back was that this is such fantastic added value to the community. And that sort of kept, I've kept thinking about that. And in fact, what ETPLAS to me is, personally, it is giving and taking co-creation from community to community. And I think that's the message, my sort of slogan for today that I want to pass on. Now, just a couple of boring things first, and I think it'll come quite a few slides. We will be able to skip fast if we have questions later to spend more time over there because Anna has been covering quite a lot already. Just a reminder of the legal framework that we're dealing with. Education and training is not. It is not the competence of the union. It means that education and training is the competence of the member state. Member states are responsible in deciding how they want to structure what are their requirements for education and training. And so there's no legal basis in the union to create legislation for education and training. Now, harmonization does not necessarily mean legislation. We can achieve harmonization, for example, through voluntary measures, such as ETPLAS over here. Now, let's go and talk about another legal requirement. Legal requirement is that we have to have competence when we are dealing with animals. They are live animals, they are sentient beings, and we have to ensure that we are competent. So the directive could have some little elements, even though the main competence rests with the member states. And the directive says that everybody has to be adequately educated and trained before they perform X number of functions. And furthermore, which was a novelty of the 2010 directive, was that it's not enough to be educated and trained. Somebody can be sitting 200 hours in a training course and never learn a thing. Another one can be there for 5 days and actually is naturally skilled. So what we wanted to make sure was that irrespective of the minimum requirement for education and training, there has to be a demonstration of competence. And this is really, really important. And that was a big change in the EU law. Why is it important? We are entrusted with animals and we have a agreement with the society. We can use animals provided that we do it within the framework of the laws. So there's an agreement with the society. Now, why do we want to strive for harmonization in this area? First and foremost, it will provide some certainty of the agreed level of quality. And this is the basis to create the competence. Also, there are other issues that will benefit from harmonization. We talked about in 1996, when I joined the Commission, I don't know if there are people who were probably in the kindergarten or by then. Now, first meeting with the member states, one of the representative member states was lifting the hand up and saying, oh, we really have to work on the mobility of the researchers. I can't understand why my researcher cannot go to the other country because the competence claims, the education, training achievements were not recognized by the other. So the competence is related to competence claims, is directly related to the mobility, whether it's a researcher, animal caretaker, animal technician. And then we go back to this issue of harmonization and link to the competence. And we have seen situations like this. And these kind of issues, when they show up on our faces, we are risking the whole community, whether we can still carry on with this agreement we have with the society. We need to be able to demonstrate that we are competent, we are serious, it is non-negotiable. Now, on this basis, we started thinking the very, very first guidance document that we developed was on education and training. And you've already seen some of these comments coming up from Anna's presentation. We wanted to have an approach that was flexible, available, and accessible, irrespective where you're staying in Europe. Affordable. Some of the claims were it is too costly to send to a course of XYZ, and agreed quality, harmonization, mobility, competence. Um, and we looked at it I'm going to show you a little bit a different way of looking into it. We looked at today's users. Who are the today's users? We have the people, sorry, what did I press now? Let's go here. Staff functions. We have the people working under the directive. And we have specific roles under the directive. Competence assessors, which is something that was not really discussed when the directive was being developed, but it's been evolving over time. And when we have separated education and training from the demonstration of competence, it really is in the hands of the establishments, because that's where you can test and demonstrate the competence. It is a role that is required practically in every single establishment. Project evaluators, inspectors, these are roles for the competent authorities, but they need to be educated and trained as well. So what we want in a framework, we want practical training, competence assessment, CPD, career progress, etc. Now, we should not forget the future. And we're not going to be talking that much about education and training, a formal one in terms of primary schools, secondary schools, universities. But I want to bring this up here as well, because it is so important that we capture the primary school level in order to bring new researchers at the end of the pipeline that are knowledgeable and understand their role in this world. And we need to have tools for them. And then finally, we needed to have some kind of central platform, central something that will coordinate this, because as you recall, we are not going to go top down, we're going to go bottom up. We're not going to go from community to community, because we don't have any legal way of pushing something down, and we would not want in this area. And the central platform is something that should include the course organizers, course accreditors, and member states. So this was a starting point when we developed the education and training framework document. And that was the very first one. And each and every member state, we got a mutual agreement, endorsement for this education and training framework. So each and every member state should morally be accepting and in line with what is contained in this document. I'm sure, I hope, at least some of you have seen what's in there. But I'm just going to highlight a couple of things. It, for example, looked at certain roles under the directive. It looked at elements on continued professional development, CPD. But if you can see the page numbers, that was very limited. If you look at the roles, they were few, but not all of them. And then we have this section of the seed of being planted, the idea of something European coordination where we can work together. Now, all of this resulted that we are currently, right this moment, revising the EU framework. And we want to draw from the experience that we have gained over the last years. 2012 was the first endorsement of the education and training framework document. We have had great progress in this field. And especially when we look at the modern tools. I mean, we have here some people, some fathers for webinars that lots of people were attending. There's all sorts of new ways of delivering education, training, knowledge. And we also recognize that we were not perfect. And I don't think anybody should ever think they are perfect. We have place to improve. And therefore, we also recognize we had lots of missing elements. So we needed to capture those. So what are the new elements? I have not an exhaustive list because it's still being developed. We're going to have a face-to-face meeting with a very small subgroup next Monday, talking full day through the parts that everybody has been dealing with separately. One of the big additions will be this EU CPD framework, where we're going to be hearing later on during these 2 days. And it is really, really important that we get that as well approached in a manner that we are aligned. If we want the mobility, it would be ideal that we also approach the CPD from the same starting point. We're going to focus on the missing roles. We have some new modules. I think this slide is something that we can skip fast. So inspector module was there, but it was in a different place due to different reasons about competent authorities and their areas of competence. We have the severity framework, which is not yet included, but we have been working on it since the first pilot project. The others. The competence assessor role and module is a brand new one developed under this last one. And that is something that we would like every single establishment to look into. And we're going to restructure these tables that we have here so that it is clear and obvious where the roles are and what are the tasks and how they relate to these modules that member states endorse. So in the revision, we have areas that we will not be touching. If we have a module that has been endorsed, we are not revising any of existing modules. So any one of you who've been developing courses and taking those modules or creating training, rest assured we will not be changing what is currently already agreed. The same goes for these agreed learning outcomes. And I think that was a new way of thinking when 2012 we created this education and training framework document. And those we want to keep as they are because there's already value, there's a lot of work going around them. We don't want people to start reinventing the wheel. We will be reshuffling the content, we're going to be improving the clarity. Again, expanding on the competence assessment as a role and as a process. Focusing on Article 24.1c. So this is a person responsible for education and training and competence within an establishment. So we're going to beef up that area a little bit. And of course, the big chunk, which was just an idea at the time when it was endorsed, we have now grown a tree from a seed. And so we're going to have that clearly structured and presented in the revised version of the document. Now, this is pretty much what Anna was saying. So from words to action, it's nice to have a guidance document. It's nice everybody feels the same way and thinks the same way, but we need to walk the talk. We were very lucky that the Parliament provided us extra funding in 2 slots. Why do I have this funny years? 2017 was when we had to internally do the processes, and in 2018, really the first work kicked in. The same thing with the second funding. And we were looking at training and educational resources for the 3 Rs, alternatives, for today's and tomorrow's audience. As you remember the approach, we wanted to make sure that we also there for the future. We wanted to create as much as possible open access tools. It is not easy to put money aside for training education. In a day-to-day life, we often see that establishments are busy doing X, Y, and Z, and the training is the last of the priorities. Oh, I'm too busy to participate. I don't have resources. And that was one of the sort of reasons why we wanted to make sure that when we deliver material, it will be accessible to everybody. We're using taxpayers' money. At the end of the day, it is the community who should get back what we're creating here. And then, of course, we want to support the establishment of the ETPLAS. It was then already established. Then we wanted to make sure that people know where to get all these tools. It is all well and fine, have drops here and drops there, but idea was that we have a central place everybody can go to, and we know that that's where we get the latest information. This is from the first pilot. We started off with the 3 Rs in secondary school, universities, and primary schools to understand where we are, what's available. We've talked about these modules that were developed, free sources for individuals, anybody individually can go and do these modules, but also establishment can say, hey, I want your group here to attend and do this module. And course organizers, why not use this as compulsory pre-course material? Or I'm going to be doing blended learning in the middle of my course. I want you to do this. Let's discuss the content of this module. So there's so many innovative ways that we can use these modules. And of course, they focus also on the 3Rs and the replacement, which was important for the Parliament, for the funding. DOPS, I'm not going to repeat what Anna said, but as we talked about competence, it is important we understand what it is, how the competence assessor's role is, that the competence assessor is trained and understand what competence assessment is, and then we have tools to do that job, to do the demonstration and checking of the competence. This is something that probably you have not been seeing too much. This is a part of the primary, secondary school, universities. There are lots of learning scenarios. This is typical language from educational establishment. Teachers take learning scenarios and they see through them, how can I apply that in my curricula, and how can I slot it into my work? Can I take, as a biologist teacher, can I take one learning scenario and slot it in? And these are, again, free tools for primary and secondary schools and universities. And we created these under the first pilot, and we continued with the second wave. Now we know, we heard, we're going to have a lot more coming in. 13 new e-modules, new DOPS coming in, new assessment tools, free for organizers' time for something more important. Let's see what we can use with the IT. Can we get that to help us? And we can actually spend more time on teaching as a course organizer. Further assessment criteria, assessment questions. And this comes to, for example, back to the issue that we talked about, competent authorities having roles as well. They're having project evaluators, they're having inspectors. I will be engaging with the member states. I will be saying, okay, now let's work from community to community. Let's work together. Let's start development assessment questions, and eventually hope that we will have assessment questions for those modules as well, thereby competent authorities being able to say, I have a new inspector, okay, take the module, do the assessment, and let's talk after that. So we try to sort of combine all these strings together, and I hope you see the benefit. At least I see it, and I can see us benefiting all from it. And then there's something with the expansion of learning scenarios in the second way. We have really focused on teachers. There was also a MOOC that developed, and then we have developed virtual learning spaces. I'm just showing you some. These are specifically for children between 15 and 19 years of age. And there are certain virtual reality experiences that can be brought into educational sphere. There's a virtual laboratory that can be used in a university level. We talk about in vitro laboratory. And these are kind of the elements that I think we will bring to the next generation, who are already talking with robots on a day-to-day basis. So I'm trying to cut it very short. For me, ETPLAS is from community to community. And I think that if we looked at how it serves different people, we know that ETPLAS itself is about course organizers, course accreditors, and member state authorities, but it's serving much wider community. It serves individuals. Anybody can go and look what is available in terms of course listing or modules, or just to understand where we are. Establishment, lots of benefits coming out, especially with the second wave. Please embrace them, look at them critically, give feedback. Of course, we are not going to be perfect again, and in one day we hopefully will be able to improve upon what we have here today. Course organizers, plenty of ways to use this material and see how you can benefit from it. Free material, free of charge for you. Course accreditors, multiple tools, strategically aimed at one important objective, which is to facilitate mutual acceptance. I'm creating a training course, I'm accrediting it. Is it based on the same values and quality criteria across the board? Authorities, again, I mentioned project evaluators, inspectors, and also as a receiver. Competent authorities are often those who will say, yes, you can or cannot work in my country. And in order for them to be able to make that judgment call, or the establishment based on the laws and the requirements of that member state, in order to do that judgment, whether you can or cannot, they need to be able to rely and trust on the competence claims. If we build these competence claims on commonly agreed criteria and on this network of quality criteria, we will be able to trust in these claims. Educators, teachers, primary schools, we even have virtual games for them, secondary schools and universities. And this is basically the part that ETPLAS's website, they didn't know yet, but I will be talking to them if we can start expanding that area as well, because that will bring, again, training, education, professionals into the same sphere. And we will learn from them, they will learn from us, and it is from community to community again. So I think this is my last word with this very rushed talk, 22 minutes. So we can have some more time for discussion if we want to discuss. For me, ETPLAS is the heart. Thank you, Jan. ETPLAS is the heart of this education and training sphere in Union. And I really hope that you embrace it the same way as I see this vision. It is from community to community, we co-create together for the benefit of us all. With that, thank you.